The air was heavy with the sharp stench of scorched insulation and fried circuits. Alarms wailed relentlessly throughout the Noma 7, their piercing cries a constant reminder of the dire circumstances the crew faced. Lucan Pierce crouched in the cramped maintenance shaft of Sector 6, his shoulders hunched under the low ceiling as he worked frantically to seal another breach in the ship's hull. "Pierce, what's the status down there?" Captain Margot's tense voice crackled through his earpiece. "Nearly done, Captain," Lucan responded, his tone strained as he tightened the final bolt on the emergency patch. "Just need a few more minutes." For the past 16 hours, the NMA-7 had been navigating the perilous Wind Belt, a dense asteroid field rich with rare minerals that could fetch a fortune back in the United Systems. What began as a routine harvesting operation turned catastrophic when the ship's sensors failed to detect a swarm of micrometeorites. The impacts had riddled the hull, forcing the crew to scramble to maintain pressure and preserve the vessel's integrity. Lucan inched backward through the shaft, his boots scraping against the metal grating. The tight space made movement cumbersome, and as he shifted, his right calf snagged on a jagged piece of exposed metal he hadn't noticed in the dim emergency lighting. A sharp pain shot through him as the metal tore through his uniform and into his flesh. He winced but pressed on, retreating from the crawl space. Emerging into the corridor, he found himself face to face with Enria, the ship's medical officer. The Durox's tall, slender frame nearly filled the narrow hallway. Her blue-gray skin shimmered faintly under the flickering lights, and her 4 elongated fingers already gripped a medical scanner. "Detected life signs exiting maintenance shaft," she said in the precise cadence typical of her species. "Arrived to assess well-being." Her large, multifaceted eyes widened as they fell to Lucan's leg, where blood was already soaking through his uniform around a 6-inch gash. "Severe injury detected," Enria declared, her voice rising in pitch, causing Lucan to flinch. "Immediate evacuation to medical bay required. Blood loss critical." Lucan glanced at his leg and shrugged. "It's barely bleeding," he said, waving dismissively. "Just a scratch. I've got 3 more sectors to patch before we're safe." Enria's delicate fingers hovered over the wound without touching it. "Human Pierce, your evaluation is dangerously inaccurate. This laceration demands immediate sterilization and suturing. Risk of infection is high. Continued blood loss is significant." "I appreciate the concern," Lucan said, already limping toward the tool locker at the corridor's end. "But we've got breaches in sectors 8, 11, and 14 that need sealing before we lose more oxygen. I'll visit medical once we're stable." The Durox officer moved swiftly, positioning herself between Lucan and the locker. Despite her slender build, she appeared imposing as she blocked his path. "As medical officer, I must insist on 10 minutes in the medical bay. Minimal disruption to repair schedule." Lucan sighed, knowing arguments with Enria were often futile. The Durox were renowned across the galaxy for their advanced medical expertise and uncompromising dedication to health protocols, viewing preventive care as a sacred obligation. "Fine, 5 minutes," he conceded. "But then I'm back to work, or we might not have a ship to save." Enria tilted her head slightly, the Durox equivalent of a nod. "Acceptable compromise. Follow now." As they headed to the medical bay, the ship shuddered violently from another distant impact, sending tremors through the deck. Lucan's jaw tightened. Every moment away from repairs left the Noma 7 vulnerable. The medical bay stood in stark contrast to the rest of the ship. While emergency lighting bathed most corridors in a grim red glow, Enria's domain was brightly lit, spotlessly clean, and filled with humming equipment untouched by the chaos elsewhere. "Sit," she ordered, pointing to an examination table. Lucan hoisted himself up, wincing as the movement tugged at his injured leg. Enria wasted no time, cutting away the blood-soaked fabric with precision. "Laceration depth concerning," she noted. Metal fragments detected. Must extract before initiating regeneration. Just slap some synth skin on it and let me go, Lucan protested, eyeing the wall clock. We don't have time for a full procedure. Enria's multifaceted eyes fixed on him with what Lucan recognized as exasperation. Human Pierce consistently undervalues physical health. Inefficient approach. Proper treatment now prevents greater impairment later. My approach has kept me alive for 32 years, Lucan countered, and this ship flying for the last 6. Statistical anomaly, Enria replied, not looking up from her work. Not evidence of sound practice. Despite his objections, Enria meticulously cleaned the wound, removed 3 small metal shards, and applied a regenerative compound that made Lucan's skin tingle uncomfortably. He kept glancing at the comm panel, half expecting the captain to report another breach. Complete, Enria announced, securing a transparent bandage over the treated area. Minimal care administered. Recommend rest and elevation. Noted, Lucan said, sliding off the table and ignoring the advice. Thanks for the fix. Enria's posture stiffened in disapproval. We'll monitor condition remotely. If deterioration detected, intervention will be more assertive. Lucan gave a mock salute as he limped toward the exit, looking forward to it. As he left, his comm buzzed. Pierce, we've got a pressure drop in Sector 11, came Engineer Talia's urgent voice. The patch didn't hold. On my way, Lucan replied, quickening his pace despite the throbbing in his leg. He could almost sense Enria's disapproving gaze trailing him down the corridor. He knew the Durox officer meant well. Her species treated medicine with a reverence humans might reserve for faith. To them, neglecting an injury was akin to blasphemy. But Lucan, raised in the resource-scarce mining colonies of Europa, had learned to push through pain and prioritize the collective over personal comfort. On a ship like the NMA-7, with its mix of humans and alien species, cultural clashes were inevitable. Few were as persistent as the tension between Lucan's pragmatic disregard for personal safety and Enria's unwavering commitment to medical protocol. In Sector 11, Lucan found a patch peeling away from the hull, precious air hissing into the void. Shoving thoughts of his injury aside, he prepared a new patch with a stronger adhesive to withstand the pressure differential. As he worked, he noticed his leg throbbing more intensely, the bandage showing specks of red seeping through. Barely bleeding, he muttered, pressing on. The next 12 hours blurred into a frenzy of emergency repairs and system resets as the Noma 7 fought through the wind belt. Lucan moved from sector to sector, sealing breaches and replacing damaged parts, doing whatever it took to keep the ship intact. By the time he reached the forward cargo hold to address a reported ventilation failure, his uniform was crusted with dried blood, and each step sent pain shooting through his knee. Still, he pushed forward, promising himself rest once they cleared the asteroid field. The ventilation issue proved complex. A collapsed duct had crushed the main airflow regulator, threatening the delicate specimens collected from outer rim planets. Lucan squeezed into the tight space between cargo containers and the hull, contorting his body to reach the damaged ducting. The confined position pressed on his injured leg, sending waves of agony through him, but he gritted his teeth and focused. As he worked to remove the collapsed section, a sharp metal edge sliced his hand, blood welling instantly and making his tools slippery. Perfect, he grumbled, wiping his bleeding hand on his stained uniform. Human Pierce, came Enria's voice from behind, laced with Durox indignation. Scanners detected elevated heart rate and blood markers in ventilation system. Lucan didn't turn, pretending not to hear. Second injury detected, she continued, her voice closer as she peered into the cramped space. Hand laceration, compounding leg wound, combined blood loss nearing dangerous levels. It's fine, Lucan grunted, loosening the bolts on the damaged duct. Just a scratch. This dismissive behavior is highly concerning, Enria insisted. Must cease repairs immediately and seek proper medical attention. Lucan turned his head just enough to meet her gaze. What I need is to get this ventilation system online before we lose our cargo. Some of these specimens are irreplaceable. Human Pierce is not, Enria countered, her multifaceted eyes glinting with what seemed like annoyance. Despite the urgency, Lucan felt a smile tug at his lips. In her alien way, Enria showed genuine concern, a rarity in the cutthroat world of deep space freight. All right, a deal, he said, refocusing on the duct. Let me finish this repair, 20 minutes max, and I'll come to medical for a full checkup. Promise. After a pause, Enria relented. Time limit accepted. Will remain to ensure compliance. True to his word, Lucan completed the repair, though the pain in his leg and hand made it grueling. When he extricated himself from the tight space, Enria stood exactly where she'd promised, her slender form still except for the gentle ripple of her breathing membrane. Repair done, he announced, masking his fatigue. Ventilation's back online. Now honor agreement, Enria said, gesturing toward the corridor leading to the medical bay. Proper treatment required. Too exhausted to argue, Lucan nodded wearily. As they walked, he leaned against the wall more often, his leg increasingly uncooperative. They'd just reached the intersection to the medical bay when a violent jolt rocked the ship, throwing them against the wall. The lights flickered, plunging them into darkness before emergency systems restored a dim glow. All personnel to emergency stations, Captain Margot's voice boomed over the intercom. Direct hit to auxiliary cockpit, power core destabilizing. This is not a drill. Adrenaline surged through Lucan, banishing his fatigue. The power core, if it went critical, the explosion would obliterate the NMA-7 and everyone aboard. I have to get to the core, he said, turning from the medical bay. Enria's long fingers clamped onto his arm with surprising strength. Negative. Medical treatment takes priority. Not now, Lucan said firmly, pulling free. If the core fails, a few cuts will be the least of our worries. For a moment, Enria seemed torn between her medical duty and the undeniable truth of his words. Finally, she nodded. Will accompany to power core. Can provide emergency treatment if needed. With no time to debate, they rushed toward the ship's central section, where the antimatter power core thrummed with volatile energy. They passed crew members hurrying to their stations, faces taut with fear. Smoke filled the corridor to the power core when they arrived. Through the observation window, Lucan saw electrical arcs flashing across the containment chamber. Core temperature rising. The ship's AI reported emotionlessly. Containment field stability at 67% and declining. Lucan turned to Enria. You should get to safety. If the field collapses, this section goes first. Durok's medical oath requires staying with patient, Enria replied firmly. We'll monitor from observation room. Knowing argument was pointless, Lucan nodded and entered his emergency access code. His reflection in the polished metal door showed a face smeared with grease and blood, eyes sunken with exhaustion. He barely recognized himself. The door hissed open, releasing a wave of heat and the acrid smell of ozone. It sealed behind him, isolating the hazardous area per safety protocols. Inside, the situation was worse than it appeared from outside. The regulation panel sparked violently, and a ruptured coolant line sprayed cryogenic mist into the air. Core temperature exceeding safety thresholds, the AI announced. Containment field stability at 58% and declining. Lucan moved quickly to the panel, ignoring the pain in his leg and hand. The panel's casing was warped by heat, making access difficult. With no time for precision, he grabbed a wrench from the emergency toolkit and pried at the panel. The sharp edge caught his injured hand, deepening the cut and splattering blood across the controls. Through the observation window, Enria watched, her slender form rigid with tension. Even through the thick glass, Lucan could sense her concern. "Barely bleeding," he muttered, focusing on the panel. With a final heave, it came free, exposing the intricate circuits beneath. Lucan identified the issue. A power surge had fused several regulation circuits, disabling the cooling systems. Working swiftly despite his injuries, he bypassed the damaged circuits, rerouting power through backups. The delicate task was complicated by his blood-slicked hands and the stifling heat. Containment field stability at 49% and declining, the AI reported. Evacuation protocols initiated. Through the window, Lucan saw emergency lights flashing in the corridor. Enria remained at her post, eyes locked on him. "Just a bit longer," he said, though she couldn't hear him through the soundproof glass. His vision blurred, whether from heat, blood loss, or exhaustion, he couldn't tell. But he forced himself to focus, his trembling fingers moving with practiced skill. Finally, the last connection clicked into place. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then a low hum grew in pitch as the backup cooling systems activated. The temperature display, which had been climbing toward critical, began to drop. "Containment field stability increasing," the AI announced. "Cooling systems at reduced efficiency. Core temperature decreasing." Relief flooded Lucan. He'd done it, saved the ship, saved the crew. But the victory was fleeting. The toll of his injuries and exhaustion hit him like a wave. His legs buckled and he collapsed to the deck, the room spinning. Through dimming vision, he saw the chamber door open and Enria rush in, scanner in hand. Her voice sounded distant as she leaned over him. "Catastrophic physiological collapse," she said, her tone high with alarm. "Multiple systems failing." Lucan tried to tell her he was fine, that it was nothing serious, but his voice failed and darkness crept in. The last thing he saw was Enria's multifaceted eyes, reflecting a mix of exasperation, concern, and perhaps respect. "Barely bleeding," he whispered, before unconsciousness claimed him.